Okay, just go over some basics. Test on Wednesday, 30 questions, multiple guests. There will probably be about 7 essay questions. Choose 4 out of the 7. If you're so inclined, you want to try more than that, I'll give you the grades out of the 6 or 7 essays that you do. I think I'll have 2, maybe 3 bonus questions. Thursday is the Walker Business Connection, March 9th. Go to that. I'll give you 4 points. So, forget about that. So,
do you want us to like take a picture there, like a business card?
yeah, anything that just, yeah, I think you still back in some of the issues got to verify that stuff, but yeah, anyway, fine. Wait. All right, okay, thank you. Take a selfie with whoever you're talking. Yeah,
I feel like having a selfie for class.
Yeah, it happens. Right. Okay, so we just got a really short thing to do today. By the way, the position papers I've looked over, you've done a very good job. These citations, and I'll give you a. I think citations and doing research on this will invariably help. I practice that as a skill, so keep it up. Okay, keep it up. So, close channel. This is what we're talking about in terms of what are the value things you do with the information that you have, and this is the really busy work that goes on when you're attempting to build a channel. Right? So why go through all of the reason is you try to do that thing that is supposed to be impossible, and that is to create service output demands at 0 cost, which is crazy to think of because everything costs something. The concept of a zero-based channel is that the ideal is that you can drive service outputs at practically no cost as well. Just remember this, all right? Okay. You I didn't. Okay. So the cost of performing channel functions demand that you don't do unreasonably well. And what does that basically mean? It means you don't spend money to perform things that your consumers don't desire. It is inefficient, and as I said before, it's the most expensive of the 4 Ps. It takes the most time to be able to change things, and having that in mind, you treat these things like fine wine. All right. So, cost of channel functions demand you don't perform unreasonably well, which means you perform as well as possible given the situations. And realize that ideal mark constantly moving kind of thing. So you're never exactly sure if you're on the mark. And that's why this is an iterative process. I'll show you the circle at the very end. It means that you're constantly doing this. In your life, you'll be professionals and you'll be in an iterative process that means that you're constantly getting better or you're trying. And usually the way that you do that is you have a system, something which helps you to be able to perform better. And that's kind of what you're hoping. Right? So after the 3 strategic decisions of intensity, time, and dual distribution, whether you're not going to kick off partners, you decide gaps. So there are 3 types of gaps that we talked about. The gaps in which the service supplied or service demanded, service supplied is less than demanded, cost gaps, which are always more expensive. There's no such thing as a too inexpensive. And then the gaps that are closed by chapter 4, chapter 3, I think, environmental and managerial bounds. And the environmental bounds are those outside, particular to the industry that you work for at the country as well. Then the managerial bounds is inside itself. And it sounds unique that you're going to have to close gaps in. Even that has issues because when we look at the traditional structure, there's still problems that will occur. So let's talk about how we go about closing service gaps. And it actually looks like you do more, but the answer is yes, because hopefully what you're wanting to narrow the service to a more exact. So you do. And will perform than if you were considering doing it at the same time. There is no reason for you to go to a Blockbuster to have to rent a CD or a DVD when all you want is that and a red box at a store will just as well. Not only that, but the red box spatial convenience. They're closer, they're quicker. Don't have to go in the line like you did at Blockbuster. The other thing that you can do, which seems to be counterproductive, is you can take those numbers of options and create a menu of different kinds of service outlets. So does anybody know how many different Samsung phones make? In terms of models, it's like 15, I believe, or even 16 now, and who knows how many permutations they have. And the reason that you do that is you target multiple segments. You more fine-tune exactly what consumers want, and it gives you a broad and many things as well. So does anybody remember like the old Nokias that like that big and they had snake on them and that kind of thing? Well, what's the worst thing about cell phone? Let me say about smartphones. All the it's just end of the day. One more thing. All the battery. That's still a disadvantage. Nokia has taken the 5550, I believe it was. They've designed it with modern technology. They put Snake back on because everybody likes Snake. They upgraded the camera on them. Now you can only store 2 pictures on it, but you could put a SIM card in and store as many as you can. But the key is that the new Nokias have a battery life 1 month. So think about it. I mean, if all you need is text messaging and all you need is just a phone, that's the advantage of having a menu of different super. You target multiple users and you expand the number of market segments that your corporation can work with. So, you know, if you increase the number of offerings, the chances are is that you're going to find that you're going to hit an exact that you're with this problem. Also, if you talk when you're talking about the expanding level of service out, this is when you have also an undersupply, which happens in the music industry, where you started out with singles, and that's what drove top 40 until you get to the 80s when CDs and they took out the entire concept of singles. And guess what? Record stores started to suffer. And that was happened with the retracted level of service output. They took away that particular individual selection, and that reduced the value. And of course, you can also fine tune the segment that you're trying to target. And you do that by giving them unique or differentiated things. And of course, the fastest one is to be, as long as you can do that, there's the advantage of adding more than just simply the individual unit. And as I said before, and I say it all over again, service gaps are costly, all right? They cost money to get fixed, and they cost money when you don't have them set right, all right? It doesn't matter if the competition is just as weak as you are, all right? But hopefully what you're doing is you're competition. So to fix service gaps, the blanket answer is you try to increase the number, service output. You try to offer a menu of levels, and ultimately what you're going to do is more sharp go after the more we care about. So those are service gaps. Cost gaps, we've already talked about, goes one way, and that's when the costs are too high. There are things that we can try to do. Let's see if I on the screen. Okay. Better. Can go on. Okay, so we find that between the manufacturer and the end user, the one way that we have fixed our cost gaps is to target intermediaries. Find that we might be able to save money in here because in manufacturing, help inefficient. So the first thing that we do is find different intermediaries, and we can change the goals of the current members and who we're doing. So I was just looking at, I was reading an article that Amazon is now going through this phase out with UPS, and we're going to see this rapidly changing way that Amazon is going to work. If I'm going to be, I would say Amazon is going to go totally vertical market at some point because they're going to take care of the process from the beginning all the way to the last month. Changing roles, bringing in better and more efficient partners is one of the things you can do. Or if you want to be totally in control, you take over everything. The next is, of course, is that technology constantly changes, and you can always invest in new distribution technologies. Anybody seen a square and use the square like groups or anything like that? You know what the square is? Yes, right. And the little white thing that you scan your, yeah, the cube, excuse me. Yes. So everybody knows the cube. You have no idea what the cube has done in the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, it has allowed even the smallest groups to be much efficient in the way that they handle money. Just in reasons, people pocketing money, that's one way. And if you think about it, carrying that much money around is dangerous for small organizations. Well, the cube comes and they do it very simply. They connect Venmo now. There's so many different ways to do it, and it's cheap, right? And it's efficient. Economies of scale mean something. And so this is one of those ways that success, right? And then consistent with the top line is the bottom line, where you find who will help you improve your channels and functions. So I was watching this, and it was about there are now companies that will do all the billable hours for a lawyer now. So the lawyer doesn't have to worry about anything padding bills. And so that happened in the medical industry from 1980 to like 2000. what happened is now medical office systems no longer do their own billing. Basically, what happens is they have a third party. They send all the receipts and everything to them. They do everything, and that medical offices don't have to do anything. Office medical. Okay, so remember, once again, it's part of that thing. An efficient channel system is one that has many specialists, right? And that's an example. There are new specialists that could come in and help you close those gaps. Now, the key that you don't fix the wrong. The non-record industry was going through this downturn, directly connected to the fact that a service supplied is less than service demanded. And what they thought was causing people not to come into the record stores was quite simply fees were too expensive. And so, knee-jerk reaction, the record industry lowered the price of CDs. And it did nothing of what they thought it would do. It took the margin on, on record shops from livable to they weren't even able to pay their light bills. And so, in essence, the dropping of the price, it furthered the decline of the record store, brought it to where it is now. You have to make sure you fix the right gap. And that can be very difficult and time consuming. But those are the things that you research. Anybody ask me what kind of ethnographic studies ask? Asking people is a great way to find things out. We'll talk. I'll show you this in a minute of how asking people can make or break this. All right. So I'm going to show you another thing. Do this. Okay. So Subway was one of the most successful franchises of the 21st century. They have 20,000 subways in the United States. One of the reasons why it was one of the least expensive, you could get a franchise for $18,000. That's within the range of mom and pop stores being able to do the same thing as like a Walmart. And it was a great equalizer, and it brought growth. Well, the difficulty with Subway is that it's not going to be a pyramid structure because the growth was built on all the new franchises that were being built up. Well, eventually you reach saturation. You're not having new money come in, and you've got to find some way to raise revenues. Well, Subway corporate had this brilliant idea: instead of delivering food daily, that they would deliver it once or twice a week. Can somebody tell me what's the two mantra for Subway? Eat fresh, exactly. Well, how can it be fresh? Wilted lettuce? And guess what? People saw it. I mean, they're not dumb, right? And so this has caused severe consternation in Subway. They said, "I'm sorry," and went back to the way they were doing things. I noticed I was reading January this year, it talked about now is that they'll cut their own meat daily. Finally. It's not like they need a butcher shop. All they need is a freezer and a cutter. So anyway, this is an example when you try to fix the wrong gap that you think you're fixing a problem, when in essence all you're doing, and this is what happened, you fix the wrong gap, you create an even bigger problem. And that's the perception that Subway was fresh. They paid for it. I don't think this new thing is going to lift it more. Bad move. The last thing is gaps that are caused by managerial environment. Environmental bounds, gaps caused by that cannot be fixed. it may be impossible to change. No single one corporation has the difficulties that have 2020 to fix this. It was as it was. Managerial limitations exist within your organization can be. The difficulty is finding the ability to do it. It requires an organizational buy-in across the board to capture pull the wagons with the intermediaries, tell them, got to do this. What you're hoping to do, if you can, is find a way of convincing them to make the change. So Domino's Pizza had a dramatic change inside and outside over the last couple of years. And Domino's Pizza needed to do this for a couple of reasons. The biggest is that people's taste of Domino's, or the taste that was original to Domino's, isn't desired. People didn't want to taste of Domino's, no matter how fresh it was. And so what Domino's had to do to their 10,000 some odd franchises is that you have to completely share everything you got, and you have to start retraining everybody you have to a whole menu system. And how Domino's corporate been using. Well, this is the way they did it, and I thought it was great of this, and I'll show you more than just a couple of snippets of it, but I think it's pretty cool. The way you do that, you do it by simply saying customers are saying that it stinks. And so let's see, am I muted? So let's just show.
What's it like to have customers come and tell you that your product really wasn't that great?
But there was a day we woke up and we realized we just couldn't go any further unless we fixed the pizza. From a quality and taste standpoint, we had negative brand equity.
We got to get out there and we got to tell them our old pizza sucks.
The direction is to figure out what's broken, fix it, and roll it out to our system.
Reinventing the core recipe was the first thing we worked on. It was one of the last things we launched.
This is new. It's different. It's a new Domino's. It's a new era.
I just wanted to stop. I didn't want to go on, but it was one of those things. People's taste changed. It was also unique because he was first out there with the brand mantra, 30 minutes or less. But it just kind of shows you that they had to rebrand themselves, and the only way that the Domino's corporate was going to make it work is if they had the heavy hammer of the consumer saying, "We don't want your stuff." And it worked. It's a great idea. I don't know how better they're doing now, but if I was going to come up with an argument that was going to steal the deal, I would say your consumers are not buying the product and you have to change. So this is just a brilliant thing, right? Great to do. If you learn this little wheel here, this is one of my essay. You don't have to draw circles if you're lousy at drawing circles, but you can just put the word there, but make sure that it's in the circle. This is a summary of how to go about designing construction. So this is an iterative process. You will be using iterative processes to more sharply define yourself as a professional over your careers. You'll have this constant rebuilding, and this is what. So you do an end user and a make or buy now. You always start in the buy position. You have to justify make position. What's the number one reason for going to the make position? ROI, return on investment, right? Be a smart person in any room by saying, what's the return on investment? Compete the end user, make or buy analysis. The channel, spit out, Dave. Channel intensity, how many different outlets you want, which is not the same as channel type. You determine the unique and different ways in which you wish to distribute your product. You decide if what you want to have skin in the game and tick off your partners by distributing yourself. And then you do the last thing that we just talked about, excuse me, which is to close the cost gap to design that zero-based channel. And so just take that slide, write it down, and repeat it on a piece of paper, and that's 10. Telling you that, yeah, we're all working days, but no, and I think that's important. And so, remember that channel intensity is also tied to channel control. Channel intensity is tied to reasons about how we choose intensity, whether we're trying to introduce or continue competitive competition through intra-brand competition. We want our channel partners to find out, because we believe competitive competition is good. Have to be very careful of the dangers of free, where they go to one organization who has all the brains and goes to another place that needs the money. Remember, at some point, the channel partners may just get so upset that they'll try to move on to a different brand, or they may even discontinue the brand entirely, or use your brand as a bait and switch. Just tired deal. Limiting channels are also important for the categories of convenience goods require convenient places to go get them, as many as you possibly can. Shopping goods demand to be shopped, and so you're selective about where you want to put it, and you put it in places where their competitors are sitting, because competition helps sell. And then limited distribution works for specialty items, luxury items, and niche. Limitations brings their own value to. Limiting resources gains you control. Intensive distribution reduces it. No way that you fight. Make sure that your partners aren't fighting each other is to have such strong brand equity that it doesn't matter where it's bought. The trend is to multiple routes to the consumer, that the channel type expanding and will expand again and again. And just remember, all of this stuff is difficult, it's time consuming, and it's expensive. And then one more thing while I'm thinking about, just remember, okay, if you go in as a dual distribution, this is a simple phrase that'll get you another 10 points. The distributor's claim for neutrality is no longer valid. When the channel manufacturer is selling their own goods, their claim to neutrality to their channel partners, as they are arbitrary, is no longer valid. We are finished. Now, is there any questions I can answer? Test Wednesday. Bring
What chapters are on again? What's all the chapters?
So it's and the there's so if you comment, put all 5 chapters together. I ain't gonna do that because basically I think there's so much more in there. You know, the reason I'm not going out of the 9th edition of Parliamentary is quite simply is they put all 5 of these chapters in one chapter in the 9th edition, and that's just too. So remember, 7 essay questions, answer 4, 3 bonus, and go to the Walker Business. Okay? All right. I'll have a great one. Enjoy it.
Thanks. Have a good one, guys.
Don't do their part.
That's what